Hello, thanks for joining me again for another session of some writing. Hopefully you had a look at yesterday's video where we talked about the setting for our story, which is going to start off at least in the woods with all the bluebells covered. We collected some ideas together yesterday and I set you a task of creating a paragraph, 4 or 5 sentences about that setting. Hopefully you've got yours in front of you. I've got mine in front of me, which I'm going to share in a moment. So I will just turn the camera around and I'll see you shortly. Okay, so this is my paragraph. As you can see, I've already done quite a lot of editing because as I was going through, I changed my mind about words I wanted to put in. But what I'm going to try and do, if I can, is to read you what I've got. I always find it's helpful to read out any writing that I've been doing, because when you read it, you kind of see whether it makes sense or not. So as I'm reading, then if there's anything that doesn't make sense to you, then you can maybe send me an email and into Oakfield, and I will hopefully have a look at it. Here we go. Anyway, as I strolled along the winding path, the powerful pong of wild garlic hit my nostrils. Its flowers weren't out yet, but there were so many bluebells carpeting each side of the path, it was difficult to see the ground beneath. What was that amongst the blue? My eyes adjusted to the dappled light, and I honed in on a single small yellow flower, shining like a solitary star in the evening sky. Okay, what do you reckon? As you can see, I've done quite a lot of editing already. I've changed my mind 2 or 3 times whether to start as I strolled or just I strolled. And again, I'm not sure about strolled actually. It's going to depend a bit on what character I go with, because that tells me already a little bit about the character. So that if they're strolling, it means they're not in a hurry. They're probably not necessarily worried about stuff. So they're probably feeling quite relaxed. And that's what we're going to come on to next, thinking about the person involved in this story. Okay, the powerful pong, again, I'm not quite sure whether I like that or not. I quite like it because it's got alliteration, the pa, is that the powerful pong? And again, it depends on which character I'm going to be, whether they would say that, I think. So I do quite like that. I've got the bit about the yellow flower in. I think I might have gone a bit overboard with my solitary star in the evening sky. I don't know. I'm going to leave it in for the moment. I was wondering as well about some figurative language there. So if it wasn't going to be a star in the sky, whether it could be like a little boat adrift on the sea, a blue sea. But I'm going to stick with what I've got for the moment. I am just going to go back to my notes that I made, which are right next to me. So some of the things I have included. So I've included the winding path. I've included, it's always the case I haven't got a pen that works, a winding path. I've included a bit about it being shady. I'm going to save the coming out of the dark into the light until there's a bit more action. And ditto whether there's anybody else there. I haven't talked much about the trees and the spilling out yet, but I'll bear that in mind for another time. I have got a bit about the bluebells and the solitary flower and the patches of light and shade and the wild garlic. So actually I haven't done too badly. And all that lot has got into my paragraph. Brilliant. Okay, so the next thing I want to think about is who it is who's doing the talking. You might have noticed that I've got I in my story so far. So I've decided as the writer that I'm going to write this in the first person. So whereas it's the character in the story telling the story, you don't have to. You could say he or she or it, as long as you stick with whatever you decide. But I'm going to go for a first person with the character telling the story. We mentioned yesterday as well these 5 W's, the where, who, when, what, why. And what I'm going to do now is I am going to have particularly a good old think about the who. So my brain has been racing overnight to think about who's going to be telling this story. I've got a few ideas. and I can't quite make my mind up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a bit of a spider diagram. So that's that with the who in the middle. I might even have a question mark there. And some of the ideas and just my thoughts around that to help me decide who it is who's going to be telling this story. While I'm doing that, I might have a bit more of a thought about when and what and why and where, but I'm going to concentrate on the who. So I'm going to ask you to do the same, and maybe come up with, I've got 5 there, it doesn't have to be 5, but I think I've got 5 in my head I could probably think about to help me decide who's going to be telling this story. Also, please do go back to your paragraph, do read it out loud, maybe even record it and send it in. And if you want to make any changes, then do as you spot things that don't quite sound right. Brilliant. Back to our who's. I'm going to go and do some thinking, and you do some thinking, and we'll see you shortly. Hi, welcome back. Hope you've got some good ideas for your who. If you haven't, then maybe have a little pause, go back and have another think. Otherwise, you're welcome to see what I've got and see whether any of those take your fancy as well. See you shortly. Hello. So as you can see, this is my who spider diagram. You can see it's quite messy, but that doesn't really matter because this is just really for my thought processes to decide what I'm going to do. So nobody else really needs to see it. I'm just going to talk you through it. I think I have in my head decided who I'm going to be in this story, but let me just chat through in case any of them take your fancy as well. So I started off by thinking the obvious. The pictures were based on a walk that I did a few weeks ago, so I could just be me in the summer of 2020 lockdown. The advantage of that is I know the feelings I was having, but I'm wondering whether actually I can keep that interesting, either for a reader or for me as writing, and I'm not sure I can, so I'm not going to do that. My next thought was to think still in the same time zone, but maybe I could be a dog out for a walk with my owner. That gives us a different viewpoint, and I could maybe make that funny. I could maybe make that just a different way of looking at things. But I'd need to think a bit like a dog, and I'm not sure. I haven't got a dog. I'm not really a doggy person. I'm not sure I can do that, so I'm not quite so sure about that. You can see on my spider diagram, I've joined that idea up to another idea I had a little bit later, which was a boy going out to meet with a friend, either with or without a dog. I quite like that idea because I can think about what adventures they could have together, and I could also think about the dialogue, the chat between the two of them, what their relationship would be like. So I quite like that idea. Another idea would be someone on the run, trying to hide. So that they wouldn't be strolling along the path, but they might be running along the path, or they might be sort of nervously looking about them. I then need to think that could be quite an exciting story. If you like adventure stories or mystery stories, that might be one you could have a go at. You need to put together a backstory for that one. Who are they trying to hide from? Why? Who's chasing them? Why? Where are they trying to get to? All that sort of thing. So that's kind of my second choice at the moment. I still might go with that one, but the one I think I'm going to go with is a World War II evacuee. Now that's partly, I think, because it's just been VE Day here. I'm thinking of doing this writing just after VE Day, so I've still got my Union Jack flags that I had out for that, and I quite like the idea of doing a bit of time travel, going back to World War II times and writing as if I were a World War II evacuee. So I'm a city person, and I've been evacuated into the country, and maybe it is VE Day, and I might be meeting some of my friends in the woods. Maybe I'm collecting wild garlic to make something. So I reckon that's what I'm going to do. That's the one I'm going to go for. You could go for one of the other ones that I've got, or you might have your own fantastic idea to take your story forward. So the challenge for today is then to write a paragraph or two, which introduces us to the character, tells us a bit more about that. Now, don't just say, I'm a World War II evacuee, my name is John and I live in Stratton-on-the-Foss. Of course, you're going to do that by giving us some ideas about what your character is thinking. So you're showing, not telling. You might be like strolling down, showing that they are relaxed or nervously looking around them, that sort of thing. I'm thinking I might do a paragraph before the strolling down the path, just to explain where I'm coming from and what I am going to be doing in the wood. So have a go at doing that. So decide who you are, and then either carry on from your first paragraph or put a paragraph before that. Either way, to introduce your character, and we'll meet again tomorrow and share what we've got.